function. So like I said, tonight we welcome an insightful speaker and close friend of mine, and actual new parent to MTA, Brooks Bollinger. Brooks currently serves as the Vice President of Bell Bank, managing their wealth management business in both the Twin Cities and Phoenix markets. Brooks is a former NFL quarterback, having played 5 seasons in the league with 4 different teams, including our own Minnesota Vikings. Brooks has also held coaching positions at the University of Pittsburgh, Hill Murray High School, and most recently Creighton-Durham Hall, where he served as the club's head coach, as the school's head coach. His youth athletic career started in Grand Forks, North Dakota, where his list of achievements made him one of the best athletes the state has ever produced. A 4-year All-State starter at quarterback, Gatorade Player of the Year, a 2-time All-State point guard on the state championship basketball team, an All-State baseball player that was drafted twice by the Los Angeles Dodgers. But maybe most notably, Brooks continued his education and athletic career at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, where he started for 4 years and led the Badgers to a 2000 Rose Bowl win. In 2017, Brooks was deservedly inducted into the University of Wisconsin Athletic Hall of Fame. Also worth noting to the soccer crowd out there, his wife, Natalie, was a 4-year starter on the Wisconsin women's soccer team. Welcome, Brooks. How are you, buddy?
I'm doing well, thanks. And my wife is also the best athlete in our family, so I will add that to the list.
That's very kind. After reading that list of Wikipedia facts, that was impressive. Brooks, what we thought, as we discussed, what we thought we could maybe start out the talk today was just, you kind of telling us a little bit about yourself, and maybe walking us through, your journey in your own words, from being an elite student athlete in high school, onto college, onto the pros, into different levels of coaching, and now, with a successful business career. If you wouldn't mind starting it off with like that, I think that would get us going prior to some questions.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, John, and thanks everyone for having me. I think that this is awesome that you guys are doing this. I think it is what's the most important about not just youth athletics, but all athletics. So kudos for putting this together in a format such as this, and also for having me. I'm humbled and thrilled to be able to be visiting with you guys tonight. As John said, and I would say everything he listed, it wasn't really as good as it sounds. I mean, it sounds better in Wikipedia than it probably was in real life. But I grew up in Grand Forks, North Dakota, as the oldest of 4 kids. My dad was the offensive coordinator at the University of North Dakota, and my mom was a first grade teacher at a Catholic school. And I was really fortunate, first of all, because I had a great family, parents that were teachers and coaches, and I got to grow up around athletics. We weren't the richest family in town, but I had the keys to the gym. So I got to spend a lot of time in the gym, got to spend a lot of time around my dad's practices with the college football team, in meeting rooms, and on the practice field. So for me, it was a great place to grow up, and great way to grow up. And as you probably figured out by the things that John said, I played a lot of different sports. I played everything. Could never really skate that well. I'm better now, but growing up in Grand Forks, that was the one strange thing, is not playing hockey. Was a little bit of an outsider, but I loved basketball growing up, and I was able to play varsity basketball and football as a freshman in high school at Grand Forks Central. And my luck kind of continued in that I got to play in some really good teams with some teammates and have success at a young age, and really just had a great list of teachers and coaches that impacted my life during that time. So we had a good run in football, lost in a state title, won it in basketball my sophomore year, had some good teams. I also ran track. Ran the 800 meters. For any of you that want to really test yourself, go out this spring and run the 800 in the track meet. Didn't love it, but I did it. And then I also played baseball. So Grand Forks was a great place to grow up, and got to challenge myself a lot athletically, and was lucky enough to earn a scholarship at the University of Wisconsin to play quarterback. And I redshirted my first year, so I didn't play, which was an interesting experience. When you redshirt, you sit on the sidelines and basically just practice. But I I took it as a challenge, and I was actually the scout team player of the year, which is a proud accomplishment. And I got 11 stitches under here from Tom Burke, who was our All-American defensive end. And we won the Rose Bowl that year, so it was pretty cool. And then that following fall, I was in a competition for the starting position to go into training camp, and with Scott Kavanaugh, who was a senior, and I was a redshirt freshman. And Scott won the job to start the season, and I came in, played sparingly early in the season, and then played against Michigan. Scott got hurt. I played the second half of Michigan, and we lost. So we were 2-2. We had started the year as the fourth-ranked team in the country, and we had a disappointing start. And because of Scott's injury, I got the nod to make my first start the following week. It happened to be at Ohio State at the Horseshoe. And we started that game. We were down 17-0. And we went on a 2-minute drive before the half, scored a field goal, 17-3 at half. We ended up winning that game 42-17. We won 9 straight games, including the Rose Bowl. And I kind of became a star overnight, which was an interesting experience. I think I won my first 14 games as a starter, so I had some early success and continued my career at Madison. I was drafted by the Jets and went out and played in the NFL. Then when I got done playing, Bill Lechner called me at Hill Murray High School. I was the head football coach at Hill Murray for 1 year. And then I left and went to the University of Pittsburgh, coached quarterbacks for 2 years, and then came back here and got into the real world, and also did some coaching at Cretin-Derham Hall. So Natalie and I live here with our 5 kids, and now I'm going through it as a parent. So, what we're talking about tonight with athletics and how you use them as a vehicle to really become the best version of yourself. I've been fortunate in that I've got to see it from the side of a coach's kid, a player at pretty much every level, and then a coach at a couple of levels, and now as a parent. So I feel very fortunate that I have a pretty unique perspective. And I will tell you, probably the biggest gift that I got through all of that is I got to fail and learn how to fail at an accelerated clip. And, I think that this, at the end of the day, as I look back, and I didn't really know all this at the time, but I think from the highest level, really why we do any of this and why we challenge ourselves and play these sports is really a tool to help us become the best versions of ourselves, right? And I think it took me basically my whole career playing to figure that out kind of the hard way by failing over and over again. And I think the sooner that we can learn that and view that, that this is the sports it's what we do. It's not who we are. Okay. And it's important to have goals and to go chase them. And that's great, but there's a whole nother layer, which is being able to learn and apply it to your life and who you are as a person. And I think that's the greatest gift that we all get from having the opportunity to play these sports.
That's great, Brooks. One of the things I know that we've talked about, and as I think as it relates to MTA on a lot of layers. I mean, MTA does a really nice job of preparing their players to play at the next level, right? I mean, there's a high percentage of these kids from both the boys and girls side that go on to play in college, and the academy is, I think, proudly produce several professionals past that too. So you've got a lot of these kids that are in the middle of that process, not only as maturing as a player and as a person, but going through a recruiting process, trying to become, like you said, a better version of themselves. As it relates to kind of where a lot of these kids are right now, what would be any and all words of wisdom or advice as they work themselves through the MTA Academy and potentially onto a higher level of playing?
Yeah, I think that it's a great question, John. And I think the first thing is it never ends, right? You never make it. This is a growth process. And everything that happens to you is just an opportunity to grow and develop, whether it's in your sport or as a person. And I'll never forget, I was coaching at the University of Pittsburgh, and we had a pretty high level recruit that came in, and he signed and he came and he got it, and he kind of kicked his legs up on the desk and he's like, I made it. I was like, what are you talking about? He said, I made it. This was it. Like I my whole life I played to get a college scholarship, and here I am. And I looked around and I'm like, buddy, we're just starting. Like, you just got here, and we got to go now, and you got to become a great college football player, and it's going to take everything you got. And it's interesting. I think that happens to a lot of people. So I just think that it's a really delicate balance, and not delicate, but it's a balance. You want to set the goals of, this is what I want. Okay. And I think one of the things that happened to me is I had a lot of success really early in high school and really early in college. And that success, I wouldn't say I worked for it. I worked hard, but it happened early. I didn't have to intentionally think about how I was going to accomplish that success. It just kind of happened. And I think I was really blessed that it happened, but in some ways it was a detriment to me because I didn't have to sit back and really map out what my goals were and how I was going to accomplish them and build that roadmap to success. So I think it's important, on the one hand, to build those as goals, but also understand their goals, right? At some point you're going to accomplish them. And then what? Okay. And then what? And I think the thing that I learned anyways, having gone through it and truthfully not always having that mindset, is that goals are yard markers along the way. You're always going to have the next goal. And it is benefits you to write it down, build a roadmap, and be really intentional as to how you're going to accomplish those goals. But the next layer of that is also what you take from that process and what you learn from it, and understanding that there's more beyond that. There's your purpose, there's your growth as a person. And regardless of how bumpy that path gets, it's your story. You always win, as long as you're learning from every success and failure along the way, you're going to be successful at the end of the day. And it's not going to be maybe in the way you thought all the time, and it's not always going to be a straight line, but you're going to be successful, and you're going to be better for it. I think the biggest mistake you can make is thinking that if you make it to a point, then your job is done, right? If you make varsity, whatever that next team is, it's great to have that as a goal, but just understand it doesn't end there. It's all a part of a bigger picture. And I think that will help provide perspective as you go through it. And the same thing is true if you don't make it, right? If you got to pivot and kind of like a GPS system, right? If you take a wrong turn or there's a roadblock, what does it do? It recalculates, and I think the sooner you can understand that in your life is, oh, this is great. I'm still going to get to my destination, meaning, some sort of success in my life. It's just going to be on a different path.
No, that's great. I think that's great advice. One of the topics that I think we always try to cover is the definition. This is our leadership academies. The definition of leadership, I think, oftentimes takes on different forms, right, to different people, and a lot of different perspectives. And I think we've been lucky enough to hear those through the course of this series. But I'd love to hear your perspective on it, and what that means to you, what it potentially looks like to you, and how can we help the players in this academy be better at it.
Yeah, it's a hard thing, and it's I think it's a lifetime for me, and I'm still working to figure that out, and to lead myself as well as I can, and lead my family as well as I can. And it's a fun and important thing to wrestle with. And I think I probably learned a lot of lessons by by doing it the wrong way. I think that I was kind of a natural leader, I guess, as a young kid. When you're the quarterback and the point guard and the shortstop, you kind of don't really have a choice. But I think early in my life, because I was the firstborn and I was good enough. I led by doing the right things, right? I looked for that affirmation from the coaches and my teammates to show up and do the right thing and kind of please them, which I think is great. There's nothing wrong with that. I don't think I always understood why. I think when I went to college, I was a couple times a captain at Wisconsin, and I think my strength was unifying people, right? I think I had the ability to relate to, the guys that were from the inner city in Chicago, and then the guys that were from, you know, way up northern Wisconsin, and kind of bring them together. I think what I learned later in my life and what I believe today is the most important thing is you first got to lead yourself. Okay. And I think that the only way to really develop that true confidence and lead yourself is to do the work. I say as you, it's kind of interesting to me because you're thinking about leading these other people and how can I help them and how can I serve them, even when your intentions are great. The reality is if you don't lead yourself first, and really spend time doing the work and being intentional and really getting direct and serious about what you're working to accomplish and how you're putting that work in, it gets hard because you're constantly so concerned with what other people think of you, and you're so impacted by, when somebody puts you down or somebody doesn't agree with what you did. When you have that true confidence and you've done the work and you've spent time thinking about who you are and what you're trying to accomplish, and then you've backed it up with the work, it just comes naturally. So I think that's a step that's oftentimes missed, especially when you are a kid that's maybe a talented player, or you've been given, you're kind of the captain, and it's easy to skip that step. And I think it's really important to spend some time and reflecting and being intentional about leading yourself first. And then I think once you have that true confidence and you're looking at the folks around you, it provides you the humility and the mindset to really then understand what your teammates need, and be empathetic and lead them in a way that maybe they don't even understand at the time. But I think the first thing is do the work, build up who you are, and a lot of it will come naturally. But you got to throw in that humility at the end of the day to look around and understand that your job then is, once you build yourself up and you put yourself in a position to have that true confidence, really your purpose at that point then is to be able to look at those around you and look outside yourself, and not be self-centered, and really understand what they need to be the best they can be.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, I think that's great. So you kind of touched on a couple of things here, but you're a father of 5, like you said. So you've had, great role models from your parents, not only being good parents, but good coaches. And now as you're starting to lead a crew of young Bollingers, what are the things that you're looking out for now as that they get into, more competitive sports and going through school, and what do you see that might be good relatables for the parents out there too on the call?
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing is it's hard. I mean, it's all hard. This is, and I think if it's easy, you're not doing it right, and I think we need to wrestle with these things, and we need to struggle with them. We need to think about them and have the hard conversations. And man, it's not easy. And but that's great. And I think, a couple of the things that I think with the path that I was on and the things I got to do, I've spent a lot of time, thinking about, and I think what I'm most grateful for at the end of the day was, I kind of mentioned it earlier, but I got to fail a lot more than most people get to fail, right? And that, I think that's one of the gifts sports give us. is we got to dust ourselves off and get back up at an accelerated clip, for people that don't play sports. And for me, you Vikings fans know I got to fail publicly, which is even a harder lesson to learn. And the thing I learned, and the thing for all of us, whether you fail in a relationship, the way you act, uh, you know, you miss a PK to win a game, and some of those, you make a stupid play, you lose the game. We've all been there. We've all seen athletes, and that's part of playing sports. And it's actually the best part of playing sports. Okay, it's actually the thing that teaches us the most. And I think I heard somebody say it the other day, is how much should you hold on to those things, right? Because we take them, and whether it's in a relationship or on the field, and when we take them, and we forget we remember our failures more than we probably remember our successes, right? We hold on to them. And what this guy said was, how long you should hold on to a failure is exactly how long you can learn what you need to learn from it, and then you let it go. So I think that it took me a long time to learn that. I mean, probably like the last couple years of my career, right? Is to be able to, whatever happens, really good or bad. The bad ones are just, I think, harder for us to deal with. But when something bad happens, you got to step back, objectively look at it, and say, okay, have I learned everything I can from that situation? Once you have, you let it go. And that's what the great ones do. I mean, I was around guys that played in the NFL for 20 years, and the great ones can go, well, that's gone. That happened. I'm not dealing with that anymore. I'm not holding on to that anymore. I learned everything I can from it, and now it's out of my mind. And I think the other gift I got to see was, I kind of got to see the top of the mountain at a young age, right? I was never the best in the world, frankly, but I always say I got to stand really close to the people that were. Um, so I was close, and you kind of got to see, like, this is it, right? This is what everybody chases. This is what, in a lot of people's mind, solves everything. You make it, whether that's a scholarship, again, varsity, college, NFL, make a lot of money, whatever those are. And it's just not true. Okay. And I'm not saying you shouldn't chase those things. I'm just saying that it's not all of it. So I think, what am I on for my kids? I think the struggle is worth it. One of the things I used to do with my players, and it's harder with your kids sometimes, but I used to tell them, okay, this is what you do, it's not who you are. Okay, this is what you do, this is not who you are. And that doesn't just apply to sports, it applies to anything. It's just a part of who you are. And I'd have them write down, what are the 5 to 7 things that you value most in the world? What makes up your identity, right? You know, I'm a son, I'm a brother, I'm a husband, and um, um, and I'm a soccer player. Whatever those things are, write them down, and stick them up on your mirror, um, in your bathroom, and every morning look at them, and then every night look at them and say, did my actions reflect who I say I am, right? And it applies a lot of different ways. And what I tell my kids is, you're going to experience a lot of different things, and you're going to need to. This is life. That's the beauty of it. You're going to get to write your own story. You got a blank book, and you get to write your own story. But what do I want from you? I want you to think critically about who you are and why you're doing the things you're doing. And I think what that list helps you do is keep things in the proper order. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to do dumb things. It's just going to happen. The important thing is you learn from them, and you constantly struggle to keep these things in the proper order, right? And I'll tell you, we wrestle with it with sports. All of us have these debates of how much is too much. I don't know. It's different for everybody. There is no book or magic formula to tell you how much time you should be spending on what, um, and how much is too much. It's different for everybody. What's important is, are you keeping those things in the proper order? And are you doing what you say are you doing what you say who you are, right? If you say this is what you want to be, I'm just want to make sure that your actions reflect that. Otherwise, don't say that's what you want to be.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, on that note, I mean, do you feel like, having coached very recently in high school, coached a lot of the same age kids that are in MTA very recently, do you do you feel like that young student athletes today maybe identify too much with their sport, or maybe identify disproportionately from 15, 20 years ago? Or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, probably. I think, man, kids are, kids are great today. I think they're better than we were as kids. They're just, they are. And but they have access to more things, right? And they have access to, I'll tell you guys this, what I've seen with MTA and the way it's run, and the resources that are provided, man, I would have done anything to be a part of something like that when I was a kid, right? We had the iron-on numbers on our jerseys, and we're piecing it together. Okay, so I think it's understanding, what kind of opportunity and how cool that is, and I think you eat it up and you enjoy it. But I think it goes back to, it's great to do it, but just understand that it's just a part of who you are, right? And it's not as much I don't think, a time thing as just not getting sucked into letting it define you, and it's hard, especially, for me as a youngster that had success at an early age, and the whole world kind of looks at you as, you're an athlete or you're a football player, and then at some point you're going to have to wrestle with it. So, you hear a lot of the debates about how much is too much from the coaches, how much is too much from the parents, how much is too much from the personal trainers. And I think the reality is it's not necessarily, a formula that you can just say applies to everyone. It's really just making sure you keep the things in the proper order, in how you see yourself, and what your priorities are as a person. So it's but it's a hard trap to not fall into. I think that we all have to deal with that, and I think as parents we have to be conscious of that, because it is going to end at some point, for all of us. And I hope everybody the success, but it's always keeping in the mind is like, how is this a vehicle? How is this a vehicle to make my son or daughter the best person they can be? Like, what lesson is buried in this, and how does it apply? And keep relaying that message of, you're not just doing this to get somewhere else. I hope you get somewhere else, and I hope, you get to enjoy all these cool things. And you might say, oh, that's easy for you to say, like you got to do that, stuff. I can just tell you that what you're going to care about at the end of the day is, how early did I make the connection between the work I'm putting in and what I'm working to accomplish for my goals, and how that applies to who I am as a person. Um, because a lot of times for us, and I deal with athletes on the financial side and have spent a lot of time working through, it's a hard thing when it ends, for and like I said, I think I had a pretty good head on my shoulders, but boy, it was a big part of my identity when I was whatever I was, 31 years old, and all of a sudden everything I've done since I was 10 years old, I'm no longer in football, and I had to wrestle with that. So I think just having those conversations about, hey, it's not either or, it's both and, right? It's not, you're either all in on soccer, or you're just gonna, focus on building yourself into this wonderful, beautiful human. It's, you're all in at soccer, but and you're gonna go and you're gonna be the greatest player you can be, and the greatest teammate and the greatest leader. And by the way, all of that is fueling, and giving you, um, kind of the tools and the feedback, to build who you are. So there's a greater purpose with everything you're doing. I feel sorry, some of the kids, like all of a sudden they get done and it's high school and they didn't make the team and it's over, or they get to college and it didn't work out or whatever. And then it's just like, well, what did I do that for? And it's like, you did it for a lot of great reasons. You just need to realize it while you're doing it, to really get the most out of it.
That's great. That's cool to hear, Brooks. We are loading up on questions. There's a lot of the group out there that want to ask you a couple things.
MTA Nation.
MTA Nation is Q&A's going up and down pretty rapidly. So I'm going to try to switch gears and pivot over there if that's okay with you.
Cool.
All right, I'm going to try to start from the beginning. Kyler Owen asks, or is it Owen Kyler, asks, who is your favorite football player? And a follow-up because he's asked a couple questions here. Did you play with Adrian Peterson? If so, was he a good teammate who pushed to work harder?
Yeah, he worked hard. Adrian worked hard, and he just had so much talent. It was crazy. He was really young when I was with him. I'm sure you guys see Greenway's probably on this call. I'm sure he's taking notes with everything I'm saying. But Jimmy Kleinsasser is by far my favorite football player of all time.
No kidding. The sauce.
The sauce.
Are you still good buddies with him?
Yeah, I see him. You know, my dad recruited him at North Dakota. He's a good UND boy, and grew up in North Dakota. Just a great teammate, humble, and just a dude. So just a fun guy to play with, and to this day I look up to him a lot. So he's a good friend. Little
known fact for the audience, and I you never told me this, but I heard you were on a podcast a couple months ago, and I did not know that you handed the ball off to AP in his record-setting game. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm actually the best handoff guy to ever live. I don't know if you knew that. I'm surprised that's not on Wikipedia, but yeah, I handed off to Ron Dane the year he broke the all-time college rushing record and won the Heisman. And Adrian got knocked, or Tavares Jackson got knocked out cold against the Chargers, and I came in and we beat him down, and Adrian broke the record. So I was kind of joking with my dad that I was going to have a handoff camp. You know, all these youth quarterbacks in the area, we're going to have a camp, and they're going to learn from the best handoff guy to ever live.
Impressive, Brooks. I like that. So we're going to move to Gabby Wamry. He's got a question for you. It was, what was your favorite and most rewarding experience in your career? Good question.
That's such a good question. You know, kind of put me on the spot. So these are the questions you always answer, and you get the answer in your head after you say it. But gosh, I think that honestly, I grew up. I knew I was going to be a coach before I ever wanted to be a player, and I think that probably the most fun I had was Hill Murray. We made a run. I think we went to state for the first time. My first year went to state for the first time in 35 years, and just kind of had a magical run. And then we had a year at CDH a few years ago where we went to the semifinals and just had a run. But to be on that coaching side of it and to see those kids have that experience, which I also got to have. But you know, I got to have a lot of fun experiences. I don't know that if I just said like what was the most joy, was either coaching those high schools. And I think why that was so fulfilling is because I got to do it as a player. And the whole reason I wanted to coach is I just wanted kids to have that experience. And it wasn't just the winning, but it was the way that, you know, those success stories with those kids that they're all over the board, you know, that weren't going to play and decided to play, and, you know, were down and out and ended up having a great season. So I think seeing it from that coach's side was probably the most rewarding thing.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, it's interesting to hear too. You've got coaching in your blood too, so maybe that played into it. So next question, Brooks, is from Jim Herbert. Brooks, just an FYI, I know I'm dating myself, but I played football at UND in the early 80s. Your dad was a great motivator and coach. I believe Rob was our running back coach at that time. When you were looking at colleges, did you consider playing for the Sioux, or were you set on Division I? Also, what recommendations do you have for our kids that are navigating the recruiting process? Great question, Jim.
Yeah. So yeah, I grew up, I felt like I played at UND. I went to everything. I love those teams. You guys didn't win as many games as the mid '90s teams. Then we finally beat the Bison after 12 years. I always thought I'd play at UND my whole life. I knew all those coaches. I was at every game. I loved it. And then Wisconsin just kind of came out of the sky, and I just felt like it was an opportunity that I couldn't pass up. And not many kids went Division I, especially in football. Mostly hockey from Grand Forks. So we maybe had one other D1 football player for, I think, in the history of the school. So it was I just felt like it was an opportunity I had to take. And you're young, and there's certainly, UND actually ended up winning the national title. When you talk about it, all my buddies that went to UND, the guys I played with, they won a national title our junior year. So they had a great run too. And I always tell people like that, it wouldn't have been the wrong choice, So I think in recruiting is you got to understand the biggest thing, athletics is a vehicle for you to get you where you want to go, right? So how does that apply to soccer, right? I think it depends what's most important to you, but just remember that, maybe it's getting you into the school that you might not get into, right? Without, like if you maybe can't get in academically, but they'll take you because I don't know that I'd get into Wisconsin today, but I probably would have got in because I played, right? So it's again, it's taking that long view and really, I think you got to spend that time, and it's really hard. I got lucky. I didn't spend the time, even though my dad was in it and whatever. I didn't really understand. I just got lucky. I just made the choice, all worked out fine. But the best that you can, try and understand from a big picture, how is this going to impact my life, whether that's academics, socially, close to family, getting into a school I couldn't normally get into. And then obviously the level and the coach and whatever is a big part of that. But I always try and take the sport out of it and make your decision, and then see how the sport side fits into it, right? Because at the end of the day, you're going to want to play for a team you want to play for, but you just can't control always how the athletic side works out, whether you have an injury or the coach leaves. There's just so many variables that are out of your control. So I think you try and focus as much as you can on what you can control, and then, take your gut feel. Tough though. It's not easy.
All right, Brooks, we've got this is a really interesting question from one of our boys director, Mark Ewell, asks, other than Natalie, obviously, who is your favorite soccer player for the Badgers? And secondly, when is Natalie going to come coach it with MTA?
Oh my gosh.
I mean, Natalie's not that busy with the 5 youngsters, so she's got
she would coach, but you got to watch out. She's a little intense. So you got to find her in the right age group. But she'll be a great coach at some point. She helped out. Gosh, I didn't make it to enough soccer games. I feel bad. Who was my favorite soccer player? I don't know.
Did you know anyone else on the team besides her?
I knew a bunch of them. I'm just completely nervous and blanking out right now. I knew all those girls.
Yeah, my favorite story about Natalie, Brooks and I played men's league basketball together, and and we were in a championship game that someone taped, and we had a party a couple weeks after that, and Natalie sat and viewed the entire video and scrutinized your play pretty good. So that was enjoyable, and definitely I think we learned a lot about Natalie's level of intensity that night.
Yeah, that's what I never wanted her to come to the games. It's too much pressure.
Jeff Whitty, our club president, actually, Brooks, is asking, did you witness outstanding leadership from anyone, and why was it good leadership?
Yeah. So I did a number of times. I think Chris McIntosh is a guy that was a college teammate of mine. It was a captain when for I think both Rose Bowls, and he was our left tackle. And I think one of the things that stuck out to Mac was kind of his wisdom and his humility. Like, you know, for a kid that age to reach out to older captains, ask, you know, stuff that, you know, I didn't really grasp at the time, right? But reaching out to older captains, asking them their input, seeking advice. You know, I think having the humility to not feel like, especially when you feel like you're that person, it's, you feel like you got to have the answers all the time, and you got to lead by being decisive and knowing the answer. I think what I respected about Mac was you know, he had kind of the wisdom and the humility to go out and just ask and learn and develop and know that it's not just about you. It's about learning and growing and developing. And then, you know, he was just selfless. He was tough and he never complained and he just did his job, you know. And I think that that's something that's pretty consistent with every leader, a good leader. I think that I've been around is it takes a lot of self-discipline when things aren't going well for you as an individual, to stay positive and to look outside yourself and continue to build others up. You know, I think the test is always when, you know, when that individual is struggling, how do they respond? And do they whine and complain, or do they look outside themselves and just continue to support those around them, even though they might be hurt or struggling or embarrassed or whatever. I think that's kind of that's those defining moments that you got to put the work in to prepare yourself for, and kind of fight against human nature.
That's great. Well, Brooks, I think that concludes the outstanding Q&As in the queue. So, I mean, thank you so much for taking the time tonight. I think it was great to hear the perspectives that you have and how they relate to, you know, what MTA is and what MTA is trying to become. But just again, I appreciate the time, and we're looking forward to seeing more of you around the fields. Liv's got some pretty good DNA on her, based on what Wikipedia is telling us. So
Yeah,
we're looking for big things.
yeah, she's got some work to do, and trust me, mom will make sure she gets it done. But yeah, thanks for having me. And you know, again, I've gotten to see it firsthand, but just super impressed with everything MTA is doing, and certainly I think this is not just because you had me. I'm sure 4 other people canceled, and that's the only way it got to me. But I think doing stuff like this is what it's about, and you know, kudos for pulling it together and keep it up.
Well, welcome again to the club, and great job tonight. Appreciate your time, Brooks. To everyone else, we're signing off for what is now, I think, the final rendition of the leadership series. So I hope everyone enjoyed it. I hope everybody, you know, took away some of the great nuggets that not only Brooks, but the other speakers provided. And with that, I'm signing off and hope to see you all soon. Bye now.